beds at Bargaintown's Bed Sale. Now on all branches. That's Bargaintown, first in Dublin for beds. Don't miss today's newspaper or Facebook for our fantastic specials.
Sound, often underestimated. Too little. Awkward silence. Can make you really uncomfortable. So can too much.
Right now, your body's experiencing a spike in cortisol, the stress hormone, and your heart rate's going up. But the right sounds
change everything. Because sound doesn't stop at your ears. It gets inside you. Evokes a reaction, like a great radio ad. Don't underestimate the power of a radio ad. Choose radio.ie.
He refused to don the green jersey over Brexit and was attacked from all sides. In this week's Sunday Independent, Owen Harris hits back at his critics. In life, we ask just why do all our young women look the same? Mairead Ronan talks exclusively on that new radio gig. And Rachel Allen's Bank Holiday Burger Bonanza, the Sunday Independent, the complete read.
Bruce Betting, one of Ireland's leading bookmakers. With best odds guaranteed on UK and Irish horse racing, Bruce Betting has you covered. And with the Bruce Betting app, we're always giving you more. T's and C's apply. Bruce Betting, in-store, online, and now on your phone. Over 18s, please gamble responsibly. See dunlewy.net.
Italian summers, long days together in the sun, living la bella vita. In Ireland it's called the good life, and it's 3 days in June and maybe a weekend in August. But even in Irish summers, you can taste La Bella Vita with Italy's favourite beer, Birra Moretti. Ah, delicioso. Great taste, never lost in translation. Birra Moretti, l'italiana autentica. That means authentically Italian. Always drink responsabile. Visit drinkaware.ie.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
Now then, you're very welcome back. So we're reviewing the Sunday sports pages. In studio we have Brendan O'Brien from the Irish Examiner, and we have David Sneyd, a freelance journalist whose work you can read in various publications. I'll give you the headlines firstly then, starting with the Sun. Potshot, Guardiola tells Klopp this is the trophy you really want, and it's Guardiola holding the Premier League. I don't think there's any great surprise there. This ahead of the Community Shield this afternoon. They're the best Castle bar none is the good headline on Mayo 114, Donegal 110 there. A picture of Aidan O'Shea with his hands in the air. Mayo through to an All-Ireland semi-final for the 8th time in 9 years. Sunday Independent next. Again, a picture of Aidan O'Shea, arms outstretched at the full-time whistle. Mayo march on. Beneath that, running joke quickly lands Lukaku in trouble. That's Lukaku when he tweeted a picture of the Manchester United sprinting stats during the week to prove to everyone that he's not slow. I didn't actually realise there was a sense that Lukaku was slow. That wouldn't be something I would have thrown at him. But anyway, he wanted to prove it wrong. Sunday Times front page. Again, it's Mayo last night. This time it is James Carr being tackled by Stephen McManaman, and it's called Semi-Precious here. Super 8 win over Donegal takes Mayo into the last 4. Bottom right-hand side, United want Mandzukic and Dybala for Lukaku. That's the latest on that Manchester United-Juventus story. And I'm sure you may have seen this tweet, if not pretty grim, to say the least, from Cyrus Christie. Fan attacks sister of Republic of Ireland's Christie. So he's playing for Fulham. They lost 1-0 to Barnsley in the Championship, and Christie tweeted that his sister was struck by a fan of Fulham and that the fan's wife also racially abused her, and Fulham are going to investigate that. Christie tweeted to the Fulham fan who decided to hit my sister at the game today, and to his wife who justified his action with racist remarks, I hope you're proud of yourself and feel like a big man, you'll get what's coming to you. So Fulham have said that they'll investigate the incident and take the strongest possible action against any guilty party. Back page of the Mail then. This picture of Aidan O'Shea proving very popular, arms outstretched, grin almost on his face. It's not ecstasy, it's almost a satisfied kind of smile on O'Shea's face. Kings of the Castle, Mayo make the most of home advantage and power into semis. And then a story which we'll touch on at some stage in the paper review. Mick McCarthy here. McCarthy wants Euros to relaunch his club career. McCarthy basically saying to the Pitch Invader magazine that if we do get to the quarters at Euro 2020, that might be a perfect time to get out because I can at least go and get a league job. Next then we have the Sunday World. Picture of Dermot Connolly, Dermo's dream start, Connolly and Brogan in fight to replace injured O'Gara. So at 4 o'clock today up in Omagh, it's Dublin against Tyrone. The word seems to be that O'Gara, who's down to start, has tweaked a hamstring in training, so he won't play, which means, as John Brennan writes here, that it's Dermot Connolly versus Bernard Brogan for a start. Most people seem to suggest it will be Connolly who will start today up in Omagh. And then Sunday Mirror, then finally, no respect, no control at United. Legend hits out at Sly Pogba, labels Lingard bang average, and says players are dictating to board. This is Paul Ince, who has written an open letter to Ed Woodward. I thought, an open letter? This is strange. Where has he written this? It turns out it's on page 53 of the Mirror that he's written this letter, so it's actually just a Paul Ince column. But they've dressed it up very nicely, in fairness to them. And then the other point there, Real fear €270 million, or pound rather, Pog deal. Paul Pogba again could be moving to Real Madrid, seems to be the sense, but clock is ticking. So there we are. Where do we want to start, fellas?
And you like the Paul Galvin?
Yeah.
New Wexford manager Paul Galvin.
Yeah, I didn't expect that this would be the first piece that would actually have been interesting me, because obviously be a football background, not GAA.
And do you like GAA at all? Are you familiar with who Paul Galvin is?
Yeah, he's a man from Dunstars. No, yeah, of course, yeah, no, obviously, like, of course I know about GAA, but no, it was just interesting because I started off reading it, and
for people who didn't catch the news, by the way, Paul Galvin is now the Wexford football manager.
Yeah, and so you start off reading this, and I was just saying to Bren outside, it sort of starts almost as if it's like Ricky Gervais in The Office, where he's almost like, what is it, I'm a friend first, boss second, and entertainer third sort of thing. That's the vibe you get. But by the end of it, you're sort of thinking, right, this is a fella who actually, he's a bit different, and players could actually buy into it. So he kind of starts off, first of all, by, well, I don't see myself as a GAA manager in the conventional sense. Taking on the Wexford senior job is something I'm comfortable with because of the calibre of people I have experienced at board level. So you kind of looking at this with what's gone on with Donald O talking about kind of British remnants of British culture and all the rest of it. So he's straight away he's not the GA manager in the conventional sense. Then he's talking about the new motorway from Dublin to the southeast cuts travel times to the county, so that's obviously a big plus for him. Then he's talking about he could hear that he went to one of the Wexford hurling matches, obviously the semi-final last weekend, and he was talking about how he could hear the Wexford accent breaking through in there on the vein. So he's talking about all that. Then he starts going on about the pikemen of Wexford and the rebellion of 1798 and how he was drawn to that statue in Denny Street in Tralee. But so you might think of this, you're sort of thinking, like, this fella has a bit of notions, like, what's the story here? Like, just kind of cop on a bit. But he makes a good point where he says, I learned the most in my playing days. It's on page 2 of the Sunday Times. So yeah. He says, I learned the most in my playing career from my teammates. Nowadays, people might think the answer to improvement or progress is to be found in a book, a video, or another continent, when in fact it could be sitting next to you in the dressing room. Now he slightly that's actually a really good point. But then he mentions Dunstars for some reason, which we'll get away from that. But then he says, football is about ball and teams. It's about people and relationships first. And that's like a really good point. So he is like a new manager coming in here, and obviously he's going to have staff. But if he's a manager who's able to connect with players on that emotional level, which you see all great managers are able to do, that's going to be a huge benefit to him, you would imagine. And that's as far as I can go on that conversation with Wexford GAA, and I can let Brendan take over. But if that's the base he's coming from, where he's able to connect with players, it could work well.
The Dunstars mentioned, by the way, is that's his management experience in a way, working with people. That's kind of why because people might be listening to you and think he's just randomly mentioned, by the way.
Yeah, so
shopping experience.
Get my gear at Dunstars. He's working with people there.
There is decent gear in there as well.
It really is an intriguing appointment, though, isn't it? I mean,
out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. It kind of arose really during the week. He was one of a number of names mentioned, and even underneath some of the tweets, people were like, literally, where is this coming from? There's no ties between Galvin and Wexford, familial ties that we know of, although he's made a great effort to kind of bridge that gap between the southwest and the southeast with talk of kind of,
because he said, I sense an
heritage
empathy
and culture.
I sense an empathy between Kerry and Wexford people, and mentioned 1798, and there's a statue to the pikemen in Tralee, is it? I never would have really associated Kerry and Wexford as brothers across the country.
No.
Well, as for Dubs, they're great places to go on holiday. That's all we can say.
But he is intriguing, and there's another piece in the papers today with Mick McCarthy who was talking about high-profile players who step into management, and he's talking about really they have to balls things up because they have the reputation, they have the ear of the players, they have a huge running start on your unknown guy. So Galvin has all that, and that's clearly one of the things Wexford will look at. This can galvanise a football team. Sorry, I didn't even realise they did that.
Proper newspaper man.
I do it without thinking. But he can galvanise, the football side. I'm going to stick with it now.
The more you say it, the better it gets.
He's going to get the ball rolling with football in Wexford, which is clearly, second distant relation to the hurling at this stage. So he has the reputation. He has worked with London in Division 4.
He does mention that as something which is helpful,
He's not a guy who I ever would have thought would be, obvious management material, but it's going to be fascinating to see how it goes.
He does write in the Sunday Times regularly and has done for the last couple of years. I always really enjoy his columns. He comes at things differently. He thinks about the game differently. He's a very intelligent fella.
His byline picture alone will draw you in. It looks like he's just that stare, like.
Yeah, there's an intensity about him. Like this, whatever happens, whether this goes disastrously well or disastrously badly or somewhere in between, it suddenly makes Wexford very, very interesting.
They're a story now.
All the way next year. GA needs that, especially for Division 4, Division 3 sides. So.
Yeah. Listen, even just one of the points I made to Brendan O'Side, like a lot of lads, the Gal lads now, it's another story for them that's sort of off the beaten track maybe a little bit now, and another character for them to cover. And
if they can hang on to Davy and Galvin, the most interesting county in the country suddenly.
Well, it's kind of like, for a Division 4 team to get somebody like that, it's like when Micko went to Wicklow, 10 years ago now, which is ridiculous. The interest that was generated then, I was at a couple of the games down in Wicklow when they did get a bit of momentum underneath them. Ockram, is famously not the most plush place to go to in terms of GA terms on a Sunday afternoon, but it was brilliant. It was rocking down there. So if you can get something going, it's really it's a free hit for Wexford. They're near the bottom of the pile anyway. Yeah. This is something that may get them going,
You would imagine, even just in talking to this in a general sense of a kind of a player with a big reputation who has won the biggest trophies in the sport, which obviously Paul Galvin has, that reputation as a manager, as soon as he goes in, that could be gone after a couple of training sessions. If players, even though Wexford are struggling, if players say this fella is maybe a bit too, I don't know, overstep, that can go. But the fact that he sort of is talking about kind of connecting with the players and stuff, that shows an emotional intelligence as well, where he's not coming in saying, well, this is what I used to do at Kerry, and this is what it should work. Because not all players, especially if you're a Wexford GA player, you're not going to maybe kind of relate to that, are you? So it's good that he's coming in from that point of view of being able to get players to connect with him as a manager, but also with the lads around him, because that's what sport is all about. Patrice Evra is talking about it later on in his column about kind of when people go into football stadiums. People change when sport is involved, and that's what he has to tap into.
It's funny you do say you had the Ricky Gervais thought as someone who's not overly familiar with Galvin, because there are parts of this that would be easy to kind of caricature. And even his documentary where he's walking through New York and he's got the really low-cut top and he was always a man apart, And so he does say, I don't see myself as a GA manager in the conventional sense. I'd love to know how he does see himself. What kind of manager does he see himself as?
And we're so accustomed to hearing about the time commitments that are needed. It's not something that you can just go in, and I'm sure that's not what he's talking about, but it's not something you can go in and say, I'll give this a go, but this isn't who I am. Being a GA manager is who you are. It takes over your entire life. You're talking 60, 70 hours a week. You're talking about putting together management teams. You're on the phone all the time.
I presume he's aware of all that.
I'm sure he is, but so you're right, Joe. It'd be interesting to see how long that idea of self lasts when he's in the middle of a February national league.
It's totally held on him as well. Is he actually, because he has these different interests? I think people are always sceptical of sport people who maybe aren't sort of seen as this is my whole life if they have other interests outside of it. But when you're a manager, maybe as a player you can maybe get away with it once you're performing. He has to kind of hit the ground running, I would imagine.
Yeah, I would suggest it might have been more interesting if a Dennis Walsh or Mick Foley sat down and interviewed him. Yeah. Because it's just a little bit too opaque, this piece, and on his own terms. So when he says I'm not a conventional manager, I'd love one of the lads there to say, well, are you going to be hands-on and dictating tactics? Are you more of a delegator? Are you going to bring in a top coach that you've worked with before and get that person to do all the coaching? Do you want to, what do you make of defensive football versus attacking football? These are the things you'd actually have preferred. Because instead, the whole last column is I sense an empathy between Kerry people and Wexford people. The pikemen of Wexford were some of the last men to fall in the Irish Rebellion of 1798. I remember another of my mentors, my primary school teacher, John McAuliffe, speaking of the pikemen of Wexford during the history class in national school nearly 30 years ago. Over the summer, prior to any conversations about Wexford GAA, I found myself drawn to the pikeman statue on the top of Denny Street in Tralee, erected 3 separate times, having been knocked down once by the Black and Tans and redesigned once due to poor craftsmanship. It now stands finally in the memory of the same pikeman of 1798. I don't know why the pikeman statue came into my senses this summer, but I've always been one to take a lead from my intuitions. For everything a reason, and only time will tell the story. Well, it's that kind of a piece.
Exactly, and on statues, if you walk down the main street in Wexford, you'll see the statue of Nicky Rackard, and that'll really put into perspective where you stand in the greater scheme of things in Wexford. So he's got a big job ahead of him.
Yeah. So there you are, Paul Galvin, page 2 of the Sunday Times. As a Kerry man, I feel empathy with Wexford and its strong sense of identity. It's going to be interesting.
Has he finished off with an Ian Brown lyric there? For everything a reason, fear?
Oh, I'd have to bow to your superior knowledge on that front.
First 4 words would be, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Other GAA pieces, there's lots of Mayo, obviously, from last night. Mayo get out a tight spot is on the next page over. There's the speculation about Diarmuid Connolly. There's certainly a number of people writing of the Super 8s and saying, frankly, they don't work. Like Mark O'Shea, page 85 of the Mail on Sunday, Super 8s are doomed, is his contention, really. You have it there, Brendan.
Yeah, it's definitely the Super 8s, I suppose, divided opinion from the off, but there's definitely been a sense over this summer, the second summer of it, that it's starting to grate on the nerves of people for even more reasons. Mark O'Shea's piece actually sums it up quite well. He said that, among the reasons that people haven't taken to it was Dublin's home advantage on the double, the use of Croke Park as a neutral venue, which was a passion killer, condensing the format. So now we have the last weekend of the Super 8s followed by All-Ireland semi-finals, which is wrong, you would say. And then he says outside of all that, we don't even have 8 teams that are strong enough to compete. And he talks about Roscommon, who have been in it this year and last year and, lost 6 games. So it's definitely, that's all before we even get to the 2 games today, which are essentially dead rubbers for different reasons.
Yeah.
Cork and Roscommon meeting down in Páirc Uí Rinn with nothing on the line. Tyrone and Dublin with vastly changed lineups, literally keeping their powder dry until next weekend. So that's all on top of the fact that it's an unwieldy kind of band-aid at the wrong end of the championship as well, which people would perceive to be helping the elite get more elite and leaving the rest behind. And I was in Páirc Tailteann last night, where Meath were beaten again, but Andy McEntee was talking. Last summer they had 2 championship games. This year they've had 8, and they've played 4 Division 1 teams. So that has to bring a team like Meath on, whereas another team that will be playing them in Leinster next year, well, they're out since God knows how long. So it is, if you can get into the Super 8, it's like getting into the Premier League, and we might talk about that later on. The longer you can stay in there, it's going to make this gap more artificial, which all feeds in then to the two-tier championship. So it's all connected. And look, I don't think any of us wants to get bogged down in things about structures, but it comes down to it again. The GAA constantly has these band-aids, and what it needs to do is what we all know: if the political will was there, is tear it up and start all over again. It's the only way to go. And until that happens, it's the Super 8s now. Whatever replaces the Super 8s, that will become the focal point of our...
It's the next imperfect band-aid solution, yeah.
So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of talk about Tyrone and Dublin and the phony war that we're going to have today, and the fact that Tyrone have made 15 changes, Dublin have made 8. So it's a very kind of match-specific Dublin papers today in terms of GAA.
Yeah. I was just reading the part there in Mark O'Shea's column where he says, just on that topic, structures, and like every time, even working as a sub, every kind of column seems to be about fixtures, structures, money, or Dublin. And like one of the lines from Mark here is, the Super 8s, ? We might just get away with sensational 6s if the Dubs were not so far ahead of the rest. Now, like, obviously my accent gives away where I'm from, but genuinely, is that just the issue, that Dublin are just so far ahead of everyone, or are they? Is that what it comes back to? There's
a ton of issues. I think they're all issues. You could argue we would be looking at this summer of football as brilliant and enthralling, and actually hard to figure out who's going to come on top if Dublin weren't in it.
It's a great championship without Dublin.
which is a terrible thing to say because you want a strong Dublin, obviously, but it would be really, really close. And even, and there's 3 or 4 really good teams. If Dublin weren't in it, there've been a lot of good matches. I even find one of the problems is the really good matches across June and early July. Just the shadow of Dublin looms over the whole thing anyway. Like there's a sense of kind of pointlessness about some of the matches when you know how it's going to finish ultimately.
Because I was just travelling home from England yesterday on the plane. I was just going through Twitter, and like there seemed to be a huge buzz about Mayo. And Andy Morden, people were saying it was incredible. Yeah. Whereas at the start of the summer, I don't think did anyone have Mayo as contenders? I don't know.
I think so, because James Horn had gone back. There's a sense they would kick on again, Like Mayo not single-handedly, but I mean, like, they're fairly vital for the June-July part of the summer.
Yeah. No, but it's just because maybe it's just because I was following online and it was just that, but it seemed to be actually quite positive, the GA coverage, and then you actually read a lot of stuff and it's just like...
Negative. I think it's been a good championship. Genuinely, I think it's been a really good championship. I think the football's far more open. The biggest problem for me is probably Dublin looming over everything.
The Super 8s, if you boil it down game by game, has probably been better this year than last year.
Yeah.
But it's the same old problems that we discussed earlier are still there.
Are just people then looking at expecting this to change straight away? That they introduce the Super 8s and everything's grand and it's going to work straight away? Or do you say, well, actually, bear with it for a bit? And then eventually, that's like what they do.
It's a 3-year trial.
Yeah, right. So then, but the people who are criticising, you're saying about the Band-Aid. So do the people want it straight away, the problem to be fixed? That very rarely happens in anything like. So like, do you wait and say, well, give it the 3 years, see how it is next year?
Yeah.
And it's like a manager in football or any sport. Like, you might have a disaster, like Solskjaer or whatever. You might have a disaster, but bear with it, have a bit of patience, and then see what comes out. But like, so what happens now if, say, if Dublin are beaten in the semi-final or don't win the All-Ireland, does that all of a sudden mean, well, actually, then it might work? I don't know.
There's definitely,
this is just someone who is looking at it from the point of view of just reading what's in the papers and not properly having a full-on following the grasp of it.
Year 2 of a 3-year trial. They have tinkered around with it based on complaints from last year. So last year, the first round was in Croke Park and it was very flat, devoid of atmosphere. And this time around, they started around at all the provincial grounds and it was much better. Like on the previous page to Mark O'Shea there, page 82 of the Mail on Sunday, Mick Clifford lists out the problems with the Super 8s, you know, so he goes through them just in bullet point form. The Donegal motion, as in, you know, Dublin having 2 matches as a neutral venue, that has to go. That's a no-brainer.
That is ridiculous.
It is. It's good of you to come in and admit that. Yeah, good man. Then second, he says Croke Park full stop doesn't work. The Croke Park round shouldn't even be in there. You can't disagree with that. And the scheduling, Brendan, you mentioned that. Like, it is terrible. I think it's so unfair on the players that they have the semi-final, which is either the second or most important game of their year, 6 days after a really tough encounter the week before. That's not fair.
It's better to lose your game today in Omagh because you get an extra day.
Yeah, and dead rubbers are a problem. So he lists out all these issues with it. Some of them can be fixed and tinkered around with next year. Some of them are just going to be inevitable. I think the point about do we have 8 super teams is almost the biggest issue.
We've never had 8 teams at the top of hurling or Gaelic football. You don't have it in the Premier League. You don't have it in international rugby. Any sport, you don't have 8 teams of an equal level at that point in the championship. It just doesn't happen.
Like, are people expecting the whole summer of the GA to be like,
perfect?
Perfect. But surely every summer of GA that's remembered is from almost the next couple of weeks on.
Yes.
When the very best teams get to play each other. You're always going to have these skewed games and maybe problems. Like, I would imagine that if in 5-10 years' time, the games that are going to be remembered are going to be what happens from this point on. And if these are the games that people are like, they're absolutely fantastic, what cracking matches, well then...
There's a bit of that. I think the Dublin-Mayo finals were so epic, they covered over a multitude of cracks. Whereas last year, the Dublin-Tyrone inevitable conclusion was just bloodless. And it really forced people to almost say, well, we're not even getting a great final here, like what is going on?
Well, look, Dublin could do a 5 in a row and then, you know, the conversation will just increase after that.
You're out in the beat a good bit, are you? You're at a good few games?
Games, really, not during the week. I wouldn't be on the GA beat as much as I used to. But,
and what have you made of the season? Like, would you say it's been a good
I think it's been a good season, but then I remember sitting here last year, about midway through the summer, and just by chance I happened to be covering a lot of the football games at the start of the championship when everybody was looking at the hurling and the magnificent Munster Championship. And it was probably just the games I got sent to, but there was some superb games earlier in the summer, which reinforces the point. If you take Dublin away, is it a bad championship? And it's not. And the fact of it is, like, Pat Spillane in his column in the Sunday World is talking...
He's not happy. He's not happy, Pat Spillane.
He's not. And he's, like, one of the points he's making is that modern Gaelic games are better now purely because of athleticism, which is a point I don't agree with in any shape or form. Like, you go to any game of inter-county football, there'll be some amazing points scored, some really good goals, some really skillful players everywhere. If you go to a Division 4 game, you will see that.
Yeah.
I think the standard of football, and obviously the standard of hurling, is so much better than it was. So to say that football back in the day, and this is another bugbear of mine, was so much better. Just turn on TG Gold and look at the games. Even the great Kerry teams, there was no rhyme or reason to a lot of those games. The product is infinitely better now.
Yeah, sure, considering, as you're saying there about athleticism, you're hardly going to, considering how much more almost professional all these setups are and all the effort that goes into it and the training, it's hardly going to just be athleticism that improves in all that. Like, everything's going to improve. So like,
the number of
that's
players
what strikes me as like a fella from back in the day saying, well, back in my day we were great footballers and everyone was great, but we liked a few points, whereas
he has been accused of that in the past. There's no doubt players kicking off both feet now is an aspect.
Sean O'Shea last night, exceptional.
Yeah, that wasn't, even 15 years ago, that wasn't as prevalent.
No, it wasn't. No, and look, there is an argument to say that, and Spillane is right in saying that maybe too much of the coaching in recent years in Gaelic football and hurling in certain maybe quarters was maybe on the defensive. You know, but it's easier. Any sport, any soccer coach will tell you what you do. Manager comes in, you get the defence right. It's the easier part of the equation. Getting that offensive side of it is a little bit harder, but it is there. The standard is there. It's maybe some of the tactics and the strategies are curbing the entertainment factor, but I think we're coming out of that as well.
No, I think clearly we are.
Yeah.
By the way, Spillane's piece is about Donald Cusack. Cusack's stand is pure bull. It's been amazing. The amount of RTE pundits who were really unhappy with Donald Oates' performance.
Their Christmas party must be great. I'd say it's deadly.
I couldn't wait to watch the highlights in the Sunday game and listen to the experts explain how the two games were won and lost, the key moments, the controversial decisions, and boy, there was no shortage of them. However, two of the panellists, Derek McGrath and in particular Don Logue, instead went on a long rant, nothing to do with the games. What got me really angry though was the indirect reference to me in the guise of a cheap jibe about puke football. Seeing as I appear to have a patent on that particular phrase, I can only surmise Don Logue was getting a dig in at yours truly. So what's the beef? And he talks about how I got thrown in along with the last remnants of British culture in Ireland remark, John Bull and Jack Charlton. That's really bugged him.
I don't think...
You know what you do? I honestly think to sort this all out is like isn't David Fitzgerald in that Ireland's Fittest Families? Is just have like the pundits of RTE just go at it like almost like gladiators or something like that.
He says, I've been accused of many things in my life, but being compared to failed British culture is definitely a new one.
I don't think, maybe I'm wrong in this, personally, I think puke football has taken on a life of its own. I don't really equate that with Pat Spillane anymore. I know he said it and it's his thing that's always, but I just think of, when somebody says puke football, to me it's got a life of its own. I don't really equate it with
just Pat Spillane. No, I wouldn't either, to be honest. Also, like, I mean, puke football, even that's such a different type of football to what we see now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's getting better. I think his point on the defensive tactics, it did hold for a long time. You saw a lot of counties, club sides, college sides, who really kind of said, we get the defence right and we worry about everything else.
Yeah.
That's not the case anymore. I think people are copping on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. We'll take a short break. We're back with more in the Sunday papers. There's a Mick McCarthy interview. There's Robbie Keane. David was over hanging out with Jonathan Woodgate the last few days. Patrice Evra's done a really good interview and a few other bits and pieces besides in just a sec.
Join that conversation. Text us on 53106. Texts cost 30 cents.
Here we are, folks, live at the Sky half-price sale. It's the event of the season, Martin.
Absolutely, Sean. This is the one we've all been waiting for.
Choose from Sky TV, Sports or Sky Broadband with speeds up to 1 gigabit. All half-price for 6 months. What a result.
And that's not all. For the first time, you can get every single live Premier League game with Sky Sport, BT Sport and Premier Sport. Only on Sky.
Now that's unbeatable.
So don't miss out on the event of the season. Search Sky half price. Available in selected fibre areas. Setup fees, T's and C's apply.
Funny how small things matter most. Imagine if all 10 million cups of tea we drink in Ireland every day were powered by 100% green energy and not by burning fossil fuels. And imagine if all our dishwashers, hairdryers and TVs were powered by green energy too. Isn't that a future worth acting on? Go to sseelectricity.com now to view our range of switching offers and join us in changing the world, one cup of tea at a time. SSE Electricity. This is Generation Green. Terms and conditions apply.
The Cadbury Flake McFlurry is here at McDonald's. So break out your short shorts because rain or shine, summer has officially begun. Soft dairy ice cream swirled with Cadbury flake chocolate pieces and delicious chocolatey or raspberry sauce. Available until the 6th of August.
So there I was, browsing appliancesdelivered.ie, when what do I see? Only the future. Segway electric scooters. They're amazing. All the fun of your favourite childhood scooter without any of the effort. And not just electric scooters. Appliances Delivered now has a whole smart transport range with electric bikes, smart helmets, even Segway electric go-karts. I've seen the future, folks, and she's electric. The new smart transport range. Check it out at appliancesdelivered.ie.
With over 15,000 coolers available to hire or buy, HSS Hire has a cooling solution for every workplace. Research shows staff are happier when their surroundings are comfortable. And with HSS Hire's range of fans, air conditioners and coolers, you can transform hot and stuffy into cool and calm. Drop into your local HSS. We've branches nationwide in Dublin, Waterford, Cork, Limerick and Galway, and get up to 50% off your first hire. HSS Hire, you're better equipped.
Bargain Town, summer bed sale, now on. Don't miss today's newspaper or Facebook for our fantastic specials. That's Bargain Town, first in Dublin for beds.
Bruce Betting, one of Ireland's leading bookmakers. With best odds guaranteed on UK and Irish horse racing, Bruce Betting has you covered. And with the Bruce Betting app, we're always giving you more. T's and C's apply. Bruce Betting, in-store, online and now on your phone. Over 18s, please gamble responsibly. See dunlewy.net.
We're now in the glory days of the football and hurling championships, and the Sunday Independent will be there every step of the way, bringing insight, honesty and entertainment. I'm Joe Brawley. This Sunday join Colin O'Rourke, Eamon Sweeney, Dermot Crowe and me, the most fearless and passionate team in Irish sports writing. The Sunday Independent, the complete read.
Across Ireland on 106 to 108 FM and at newstalk.com. This is News Talk.
Good afternoon, I'm Sharon Lynch. Police in the US are investigating separate shootings in 2 different states, which have left at least 29 people dead. The latest attack happened in Ohio outside a bar in Dayton. Officers say the suspected gunman's dead, while another is in custody following yesterday's mass shooting in a Texan town that borders Mexico. NBC News correspondent Jay Gray's in El Paso and says the shopping complex was busy at the time.
Local officials say there were 1,000 to 3,000 people inside, many of those families, and just indiscriminately began to fire his weapon.
People have nothing to fear from a new broadcasting charge, according to a former Minister for Communications. It was confirmed on Thursday that the government is set to replace the TV licence in the next 5 years. The contract for collecting the new charge will also be put out to tender. Speaking on the record earlier, former Labour Minister for Communications Pat Rabbitte says the new system should be acceptable to people if they are currently paying for a TV licence.
I intended to bring it in at €5 less than the 160 for the TV licence. So the only people who need to be concerned about the universal charge are the people who are evading it.
A standoff is currently taking place between truck drivers and farmers in Ferrybank in Waterford. Members of the Beef Plan movement are into their 6th day protesting outside the APB meat factory about what they say are unsustainably low prices being paid to them by Irish factories. It's understood there are around 30 farmers there today who are preventing trucks from gaining entry. The Gardaí are on site as well. Pat Kerwin is one of the farmers present and speaking to KCLR 96 FM. He says it's all entirely peaceful.
There's 4 trucks here, and we reckon about 200 cattle trying to get entry to ABP in Ferrybank. And the farmers are mounting a peaceful protest. We're asking them not to pass.
And Gardaí in Dublin arrested 6 motorists for driving under the influence of an intoxicant on Friday evening. They were arrested during a series of 8 checkpoints on major routes out of the city as part of Operation Lockdown. A total of 361 motorists were tested on the roadside for alcohol and a further 29 tested for drugs. That's it, more in an hour.
News Talk weather.
Thanks to the AA. You'll find our lowest car insurance quotes online, guaranteed.
Mainly dry with bright or sunny spells. Highest temperatures of 18 to 22 degrees. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
off the ball. This is News Talk.
Welcome back. We're reviewing the Sunday papers. Vincent Mulcahy reckons the quality of GA football not the problem. The sense of hopelessness and the feeling of inevitability when playing Dublin is the bigger issue. We're here with Brendan O'Brien of the Irish Examiner and David Sneyd, journalist as well. We've gone through a lot of the GAA stories. The back page of the Mail on Sunday. McCarthy wants Euros to relaunch his club career. This is Mick McCarthy, who's done a wide-ranging interview with the Pitch Invader magazine, and Philip Quinn has picked out some of the best quotes from it, including, "If we get to the quarterfinals of Euro 2020, that might be a perfect time for me to get out anyway." He's basically saying, given the nature of the contract, that might be a perfect time to get out because I can go and get a league job. There'll be somebody thinking, Mick's leaving, we'll give him a job. And he also said that he might go early. This maybe is more interesting in a way, if they don't qualify. Our target is to qualify. If we qualify, then of course I'm staying for the Euro finals. If for some reason we don't qualify, I'd be pretty impotent because what would be the point of me staying? So you suspect if they weren't going to make the Euros with a game or two to go, he might vacate for Stephen Kenny to step in. Also said of Declan Rice that his mind was definitely made up when I went to see him. He'll probably tell you if he was sitting here it wasn't, and we had a good meeting, but I always thought if he had a chance to play for England, he was going to take it. There's some of the headline quotes on the back page of the Mail. Philip Quinn's written more about it inside. What jumped out at you?
Well, the headline's good, obviously, as well, where he just says, "I'm an Irishman. When I was growing up, I regarded myself as half English and half Irish. Now the Irishness has taken over." So that's interesting. And then
Something gone funny with your mic. Are you getting them out there, lads? Any issues?
How's that?
Don't know. We'll try and figure something out. You can talk into that for the time being.
No problem. Hopefully you can hear me now. So in terms of what jumped out, obviously, well, there's a panel as well, so you have like McCarthy on VAR, Brexit, television, and Game of Thrones. So it's good to know that he thinks Brexit is insane. This line there, I thought we had a pretty good carry on as it was. So that's a nice little line. It talks about VAR, saying it's a bit like golf. I like it and dislike it in equal measure, depending on the result that goes with it. He loves billions of people watch that, and Better Call Saul.
Likes billions.
Yeah. But he also talks.
Nobody's perfect.
Yeah. It's decent, no?
No, it's the most formulaic trash I've ever come across. Genuinely, I like the first series, but Jesus,
killing me there.
No, come on.
I thought it was good, no?
It's really, really average.
Is it?
Yeah. Sorry now.
I'm wielded by that.
So Mick McCarthy likes billions.
Mick McCarthy likes billions and The Sopranos, so that obviously savours it. He thought the last episode of Game of Thrones was woefully bad. I haven't watched that. No, there's loads in it. It's like a full page on 64 of the Mail. Like I just said, it's from an interview in the Pitch Invader magazine. So obviously Philip Quinn has had to take the best bits essentially from it and put it all together. The interesting stuff on it obviously is, well, I actually didn't realise that his mum was still alive. She's 96 and she keeps
That's his mother-in-law.
Oh, sorry, his mother-in-law. Yeah, so she's 96 and basically says, Mick, there are men from Ireland and there are Irishmen. You're an Irishman. So like that's a nice little line, I suppose. Yeah, the bits that he says about...
A good few times before that line.
Pardon?
He's used that line a good few times.
Oh, has he?
Yeah, that's like his go-to line on identity.
Right,
okay. Really crushing him.
Yeah, really killing me here.
Sorry. I couldn't not say it.
My car's parked about 2 minutes ago. I just no, but then when you go through it, so obviously the bits that are on the back about the fact that he still wants another job. Like he still is only 60 years old, and if he delivers for Ireland, he will be getting another job in football. Like he's definitely going to get a job in the Championship. It's just jobs always coming available there, and he is proven, and he's still up for it. Like it's not one of these where like Trapattoni coming in to manage Ireland, where it was maybe a bit of a swan song and finish up. Like he's someone who came in to take the Ireland job, knowing it was only going to be for a short period of time, and then ready to go on. The fact that he's even saying the last 8 of the Euros, like Ireland at the moment are in a great position in the group. You go back to the last qualifying campaign under a previous manager. At this point, we were also top of the group in a very good position. Had just won away in Austria. Everything looked swimmingly, and then just things fell apart. Like it's almost as if a lot of what's happening for McCarthy in the next in September when the next qualifier comes around, it's going to depend on how lads start in the Premier League. Like it really is a big thing. So like the interview here, it's good to kind of get a sense of where he's at. He's covering a range, right, like a wide range of topics with the Pitch Invader magazine, and then obviously Quinner here is trying to make it well focused on what's happening with Ireland.
Yeah.
So, but it's interesting.
Philip Quinn raised a point which Mick certainly doesn't. It remains to be seen if the new FAI hierarchy revisit the terms of the managerial succession contract drawn up by former CEO John Delaney last November, as McCarthy has overseen improved results and rekindled spirits amongst the players. There's no chance, Brendan, of that contract going anywhere, I would think. Stephen Kenny would not allow it. Like, that's just a million miles away from happening. He would need to win the Euros 8-0 for that to even arise, I would think.
You'd imagine from a legal point of view, notwithstanding all the mess that the FAI is in, that's watertight. I mean, these guys have agents that are dealing on their behalf, so I don't see that coming at all. I think it's interesting in terms of McCarthy's future and what happens if it. Dave quite rightly said, the campaign can still go pear-shaped. But if you look at Martin O'Neill, even though it did go pear-shaped, he had enough backers in the media and elsewhere in England to keep his stock high so that he could walk into a decent championship job at the end of it. And given the job that McCarthy has done already, people will be looking at that going, Mick can still do a job. So I think unless Ireland completely fall off a cliff, I think he's very well set for a job. And the other thing that jumped out at me, now maybe he's said this before because he's been asked about Declan Rice infinitely, but he says at one point, would Ireland have done any better with him? I don't know, I doubt it. Has he said anything like that before?
No, he did.
That's a line that needs teasing out at the next press conference.
Yeah, it is. That's actually an interesting one. But
does he not just mean, look, one player can't make that much difference? Is that all it means?
Still Declan Rice, who's a young Premier League starter and now England international. So I fail to see how that point stands up to any sort of scrutiny.
It's actually like. It's actually almost like a good time for an interview like this to come with McCarthy to sort of see where he's at and what he's feeling, because he's obviously confident going into the next few games if he's even talking about getting to the last day of the Euros. And the reason why I think it's a good time is if you tied in with what's happening now, so the Championship has just started and the Premier League is going to be started, so obviously there's previews and all the rest of it. Like, some of what's happening with some of his big players is actually going to be very interesting over the next month or so. So you've got, just to go off on a bit of a tangent, so you've got like Shane Duffy at Brighton, who has a new manager in Graham Potter, his name is, I think it is, who basically wants to play football from the back. So, and Brighton have also now just spent 20 million on a centre back from Bristol who fits into that mould.
And Mick has just spoken in that interview about Shane Duffy being how he was and getting the ball down and giving it somebody better position to do it.
Exactly. Now, like the whole kind of jigsaw of transfers, so obviously Harry Maguire going from Leicester to Man United means Lewis Dunk, who's at Brighton, Duffy's partner, could possibly go to Leicester. So that may mean that Duffy is grand. But it's interesting because no one's going to sit here and say, well, Shane Duffy's going to fit into that mould of a ball playing centre back. So if he's not playing football from the start of the Premier League season, that's going to be an issue. He's still going to be, you would imagine, a guaranteed starter for Ireland, but if he's not playing football, that's interesting.
He won't be as good, he won't be as sharp.
You look in I know we'll cover it in a bit, but there's doubts now over Jeff Hendrick's future at Burnley. The fact that Burnley could be willing to let him go for half the price of what he paid for him when he was their club record signing. James McCarthy could be getting reignited at Crystal Palace. Glenn Whelan's could be going to Hearts on a 1-year deal. Like, how the Premier League starts, like Sheffield United have a very load of Irish lads there now. It's what's going to happen over the next month or so in the Premier League is going to feed, and the Championship is going to feed big time into what happens when Ireland play Switzerland in September. Like,
I know on paper I agree with you, but then by the same token, I often don't know how much bearing it has. I think Jason McAteer is coming in and scoring against the Dutch all those years ago, and international football almost being talked about these players as a refuge, and like there's a feel-good factor, and it's almost its own little stratosphere, and it doesn't seem to have much bearing. Look, I appreciate, like Mick McCarthy said at least half a dozen times now, he'd rather somebody playing regularly in the Championship than sitting on a Premier League bench, and I accept that. But I don't know how worried I'd be if Shane Duffy didn't play football as regularly.
Yeah, I'd still like my centre back playing a little bit of high pressure, especially a centre back, a defender in general. But I think it is interesting, and myself and Dave touched on it outside about, what's better for the Irish players? Is it playing in a high flying Championship team or playing in a Premier League team where you're just, it's pressure all the time, you have the threat of relegation? And the fact that there is so many Irish teams in the Championship, which is the 5th best league in the world or something, is the stat that's thrown out. That's very, very encouraging. It starts this week, obviously, and there's a lot of Irish interest in it. So
yeah, I'm probably going overboard with that point. Yeah, you definitely would rather him playing, there's no doubt.
But there is something in what you say as well.
He says, by the way, well, just, the stuff I kind of find interesting a lot of the time is when he's talking about the best players he's played against and stuff like that, because he's great. And the stuff on Ruud Gullit, it's Ruud Gullit, that's the best player he's played against. Ireland played them at Euro 88. I remember he comes out, he's 6'4", he's built like Adonis. I thought, I'm going to try and take the ball off him, but he nicks in and he's gone. Then I thought, I'll try and rough him up, but then he got hold of me and just pinned me down. I'd love to know what that meant. Then the ball came in the air and I thought, well, I'll beat him here, certainly. And I went to head it and I got all these dreadlocks in my face. And then when we landed, I realised that he chested it down. So I think I'm effed now, because I can't tackle him, I can't run him, I can't bully him, and I can't beat him.
That's the game with the famous picture of Gullit and Chris Hughton running down the sideline. There's a very famous photo of it, which is brilliant. But McCarthy obviously learned his lesson in some sense, because he kicked Georgie Hadji up and down the pitch in Genoa 2 years later. So,
of his former Irish colleagues who he felt would make, but I suppose at this point it would have made good managers. He had Kevin Moran, Andy Townsend and Ray Houghton. He said they had the right personalities, but sometimes it's about getting the right opportunities. So it's interesting, it's worth a read.
It's actually, in terms of opportunities, just even was looking at the other day, so if you look now in the Premier League, you've got Frank Lampard is obviously a young manager, obviously Solskjaer. Look at a lot of the Irish greats. So you have Robbie Keane, assistant at Middlesbrough, Shay Given, goalkeeping coach at Derby, John O'Shea, assistant or coach at Reading, Damien Duff is assistant up at Celtic. So there's a path there being forged by some of Ireland's best players over the last few years as well. So
rightly so. That was a great generation. Like we look back on it now as a golden generation. Like if Duff and Keane and these lads weren't progressing, you'd be worried. And so speaking of Robbie Keane, page 47 of The Sun, David, you have a piece here. Keano's got my back. This is Jonathan Woodgate. So you were over in Luton Town's Kenilworth Road on Friday night and you were chatting to Jonathan Woodgate. First of all, one of the first questions I wanted to know about was, how did Robbie Keane feel about that Daily Mail interview? Fuming is the word. He's not impressed with it.
So I went over on Friday just on the proviso. I was like, well, I actually had arranged to go over even before that interview.
This was Middlesbrough's opening game.
Middlesbrough's opening game, 3-3. Smashing game of football. It's actually really, really good. Terry Connor was there as well. And it was a really good game. I think he might have been watching with Darren Randolph. I think it was Darren Randolph's first game since early in pre-season. He had a bit of an injury and there was some suggestion that he was going to go to Aston Villa till Tom Heaton came in for him. But I went over there thinking, try and grab a word, Robbie, try and be lucky, but he was gone on a motorbike, literally full time, straight down a tunnel, motorbike to the airport to get to a wedding in Dublin. So like bit of a kibosh there for me, so I was like, right, sickler. So next best thing was chat to Woodgate about him and managed to do that. And it was interesting because like I was just watching them during the game, so that was the whole point of going over as well, get a sense of the relationship between the two, and obviously they're good friends, but like they were coming off at half time and it was 2-2 at that point, so Middlesbrough had gone 1-0 up and then went 2-1 down and then equalised, and Robbie was just in Woodgate's ear like at half time. Woodgate sort of like applauding to the fans, and like, Robbie's just going off on him. He's like obviously peed off about something. Now I asked Woodgate what was the story there, he just wouldn't say, but he was like, it was interesting. He just said like Robbie's loyalist brought up stuff about the interview, and Robbie was speaking to people at the club. He just wasn't happy about how it materialised and how it was put together.
Did he not play his part though?
Well, yeah, he did. Of course he did. Like, the quotes what he was saying. Of course,
he can be fuming. You can ask questions you wouldn't like, but he could have handled them completely differently.
Yeah, I'd say any time anything's written about any person, if they bother to read it, they're probably going to find something that they're not people. But but the piece. But what's interesting as well is that the impact he seems to have made around the place is really positive. Not just with the players, but say with staff and even with the fans. Like they had like kind of an open thing with the 4 members of staff who are all part of Woodgate's background team, because it seems to be a real sort of, I suppose, collegiate approach seems to be what Woodgate is taking. And Robbie was just very open, not kind of saying, similar coming in, saying, well, I'm Robbie Keane, I'm going to do this and do that. Woodgate even expressed it there, the way he is with players and getting the best out of them. Like I was chatting to a couple of people at the club and they were saying there's fellas there who, under Tony Pulis, were gone, like confidence-wise at the club. But Robbie is getting something out of them, not just, obviously Jonathan Woodgate is the manager, but like it seems to be a case of Robbie is the one on the training pitch as well, getting in lads' ears and just trying to give them that little bit of confidence. And you could see at the game, he was constantly out, he was scribbling on notes and constantly kind of like, at the wingers especially, there's a lad there, Marvin Johnson at Middlesbrough, like 28 years old, he's been up and down the leagues, about eight clubs, whatever. And by all accounts, he's someone who Robbie has kind of taken under his wing a little bit to try and get the best out of him. And you looked at him on Friday, some of the touches, he got man of the match by one of the local papers. He was smashing. Last year, totally bombed out by Pulis, you know. Now, there could be that element where, say, a new regime, so they're always going to try and, fellas might kind of have a spring in their step, but all the talk so far is real positive, and that interview that was in the Mail last week doesn't seem to really have had much of an effect. It's not really kind of rocked the club or whatever.
How many players would have even seen it?
Yeah, true, yeah.
You know, they couldn't care less. And Woodgate said that as well, like it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. I've known Robbie since I was 19 years of age. Didn't realise he was. So was Woodgate 19 when Keane joined Leeds? He was
very young in that
Would have
team,
been,
yeah.
We have a great relationship, we trust each other, that's all that counts. People, as you write, have been won over by his work rate. While he said they've been fuming with the interview, it's quickly forgotten. And
the fact that he was saying, Woodgate was saying about that he's the loyalty and that he knows he has his back all day long, because Robbie's made no secret of the fact that he wants to be a manager. You know what I mean? So like you would think Jonathan Woodgate, a young manager, right, I'll get an old head in beside me to kind of guide, but he's gone for someone who he knows he can trust and isn't worried about, and like that's important as well. And like there's another aspect to it at Middlesbrough, which I only discovered before I went over there, was there was a goalkeeping coach there, Leo Persovic, I think his name is, sorry, I might have got that wrong. He's from Uruguay. Unbelievable story. So like this fella was a goalkeeping coach at Middlesbrough under Karanka, went to Brazil and was working with Fluminense, and was driving and it crashed his car off a bridge with his whole family in it, and two of his young daughters died. His son was in a coma, survived, his wife survived, and he survived, and now 17 months later, this is like the week of Christmas 2017, like literally his life totally devastated, and he's now back part, and you seeing the interaction between the kind of group at Middlesbrough, it seems as if it's just really, really close knit and tight. Like it was actually really interesting to see, because you sort of get the sense that sometimes in football that it's just real kind of everyone's in it for themselves, and there is that element, don't get me wrong, like of course there is, and like listen, I'm sure if Middlesbrough do well and Robbie's offered a job, he could be the first one out the door.
The motorbike out the door.
Yeah, on that motorbike out the door, you never know, but at the moment, and it was something that was lacking on Middlesbrough before, was just a bit of a connection, and it seems to really be there now, and it's interesting that he's a part of it. It's one of the more interesting aspects in the Championship as well that's happening, so it's definitely going to be one to keep an eye on.
He's an interesting case. When he was put on with the Mick McCarthy team, I remember feeling very critical of it, and beyond his exemplary playing career, what has he got to offer? And I thought as well, like, has he been brought in just to kind of help strikers out, as you say? He was very, in an interview with the Irish journalist, he was very, very, concrete. That's not what I'm here for. I'm a coach. You add this into it as well. Suddenly, from a standing start, he's got a really interesting coaching career from nothing. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Ronan O'Gara, kind of going out and spreading his wings very quickly, doing very well. So he really is a good story.
What are the expectations from Middlesbrough this year?
Like, they haven't spent big money. They've only spent like a couple of $100,000 on a winger from, I think it was West Ham's under 23s. Like, they were getting fellas off their wage with like Stuart Down on the left. They took a hit on a centre back that they bought who was gone for we lost like half the money on him. They spent £7 million on him. Around the club, Robbie made the point. It was like when he had this kind of like fans forum during the week, and he was like saying to Woodgate, he was like, if you had said I'm only coming in here, sure, we're going to finish 10th, but we'll have a bit of crack and learn along the way. He was like, bring me back when you're not drunk. That's what Robbie was saying. He was like, I want to be challenging for promotion, but the fans don't seem to. Well, the ones I spoke to, and even certain people at the club, they're sort of thinking this could be a year of seeing how it goes, kind of let it materialise, and obviously if things go very badly, it's going to end for them. That's just the nature of it. Like when I'm there talking about kind of the feel good factor at the moment, and it was still a 3-3 draw away from home against a good Luton Town team, in fairness. They play really good football, but like they have to get results as well.
You look at the Championship, and again yesterday, two of the favourites lost, and two of the promoted teams from League One won. There really is that kind of NFL feel about it. You just don't know. I mean, it's going to take a long, long time for the favourites to kind of emerge there, and that's what makes it such a fascinating division.
Yeah, it really is. Like I went to that game on Friday, Luton Borough, and then yesterday went to Millwall Preston, just because like you've got loads of Irish there now as well. So you've got Alex Pearce is now a Millwall captain. He was on loan there, but they signed him permanently. Aidan O'Brien started up front for Millwall. Sean Williams, who I spoke to after, 32, still going strong. Like, just really good, talented footballer. He's there. You've got Shawnee Maguire at Preston and Alan Brown. kind of attacking midfielder. They all started, and even like just chatting to a couple of them after, that's what they were saying. It was like, on the one hand, you had Sean Williams, who was absolutely buzzing, building towards this one game, they win it, and then Maguire, who was like, right, we built towards this and we've lost. And he was like, but it's such a long season. And even he made the point straight away. He was saying, straight away after the match, he was on his phone checking the other results. And he was like, well, Blackburn had the, I think they got beaten. I think Wigan had come back to beat Cardiff.
Yeah.
It's just, there's a lot of words.
As well.
Yeah, it's just, it is an exciting league if you've got an interest in it. You know?
And just before we go on Woodgate, because it's interesting, you got to talk to him in the bar come press conference room at Kenilworth Road, which smelled of beer. That's a long way from Real Madrid. I always liked Woodgate. Like, when he came on the scene, he was a brilliant player. And then there was the Affray court case where Lee Bowyer kept playing and played some of his best football. And Woodgate, it seemed at the time, his weight plummeted. He was too stressed to even contemplate playing football, which, even though he was totally in the wrong over the incident, garnered a certain sympathy. I couldn't help but think, God, he's gone through a tough time. And then when he went to Madrid and the injuries happened, I remember watching the night he came back after a really long injury and scored a header late on and ran over to the medical team, and like, his body went again not long afterwards. So I kind of felt he was robbed of his best years and certainly his potential. What kind of fella is he? Because I actually don't know much about him as a person, really. I was always very much through the prism of just kind of watching his career from afar.
I'm literally going off the course of a few minutes of a conversation, but like, the fact that he stopped alone, for me, he's like...
It means you love him.
It means I love him, you know what I mean?
Is he a confident fella?
Yeah, very confident. There was a small element, not playing to the gallery a little bit, where he's a hometown, he's from Middlesbrough, he's a hometown fella. Like, he was, maybe from the outside, maybe he was just being so used to fellas talking rubbish about that sort of stuff, but he genuinely was talking about how humbled he was and how proud he was to be the manager. But what I found interesting, I thought, was when I was chatting to him and mentioning Robbie and bringing up that other stuff about what was said in that interview, just the kind of switch where it was like there's just the focus and the sharpness and just talking directly about just how impressive Robbie was with him and stuff. But then just as a fella, like, he just seemed, he started off obviously in a suit and all, started off real cool and calm, but then within 2 minutes he's kicking every ball up and down the touchline, you know. And it's interesting what you said about that about Madrid, because he's sort of almost like Lily King, fellas like who everyone talks about them as having being like these great fellas. And like, I have an age where I was able to remember him, but I always just remember Woodgate as someone who was always injured. Like, I know that's terrible to say of a fella, but clearly the talent to go to Real.
He was a super centre.
But like, so good at the start, Okay, so that's Keane and Woodgate at Middlesbrough. Interesting year ahead for them. Patrice Evra. I mean, there's no standout interview probably across the Sunday papers today, but if there's a contender, it's definitely Patrice Evra on page 75 of the Mail on Sunday.
He's
includes like standout kind of. You open it and you get greeted with things like, I don't hate Suarez, I just wanted to punch him in the face. That's kind of the vibe with this. Anyone who's seen Patrice Evra on his social media platforms knows he ain't shy.
If you're on social media, especially on Instagram, there can almost be a little bit of awareness and a bit of awareness of whatever. You're sort of like, at first it was a bit of crack, and then like you're just like, oh mate.
He's a very interesting kind of nuanced take on racism, which I found very interesting. Like, I mean, obviously the background is the Suarez incident when Evra claimed that he was called Negro by Suarez a number of times in the game between Man U and Liverpool. But the quote that kind of jumps out is, I don't know if Suarez is a racist, I don't know his family, I don't know his background, but racism is so big for so many years, and that day there was racist abuse. Then he goes on, I don't know him close enough to say he's racist, but he used that racist word. And, you know, that's very different to what we hear, and it's interesting for a guy who's allegedly a victim of this to put it in very nuanced way. I mean, surely your words and your actions define who and what you are. And yet he has a kind of a very different...
He named them as in that year, which, first of all, it's mad that's 8 years ago. Like, it's crazy. But he actually said that he picked Suarez in his team of the year because he was like he was the best striker at the time. Why should I not recognise his talent, even if he isn't a good person? I don't know if he is a good person. We had one episode.
And he says the same about people in general, and this whole thing again of once you go into a stadium, people can become animals, and that's the headline. You can't call English people racist. But when fans come into a stadium, they act like animals. That's the headline. And of course, this is on, the foot of yesterday's incident with Fulham, which I mentioned earlier, Joe, with Cyrus Christie's sister. And he says again, should I call them racist for that? I don't know. This is obviously in relation to people in general in stadiums. There are different ways to hurt the player, but I don't know why you have to talk about colour. And he's very good on the Say No to Racism campaign, which he just says, I'm not a robot. I'm not just going to come out and say no to racism. He says players say that, they don't even think about it. It's let's do this, tick the box and move on. It's a really...
But that's on that with the kick society to say no to racism and the kind of kick it out campaign. It was one of those aspects. If you go back to that whole episode of say 8 years ago, one of the worst things about all that was the T-shirts after that Liverpool players wore. Which in hindsight, when you're looking at it, you're sort of thinking, regardless of...
Not even in hindsight, on that night I couldn't believe that. And I thought this is Kenny Dalglish's worst hour in a Liverpool.
Crazy. But then when we bring it into that, so then if you're looking at it now, obviously he's retired. That's the whole point for this piece as well, is the fact that obviously Evra has announced his retirement. I actually thought it would happen
I was surprised this was the Evra retirement interview.
But when he says here, he says this is about the shorts about saying no to racism, and he says he goes, they asked me to do those campaigns, but I won't because they're fake. The players don't even know what it's about. Some of them don't even want to do it. So when I did that 40 Instagram video when I was dressed as a panda, which just is a brilliant line, it was because I wanted to affect kids. If you're funny, you might reach more kids, but don't say to me, say no to racism like a robot, because that won't affect anyone. I'm happy to do a campaign against racism, but in my own way. Maybe I'm crazy, but it's a good craziness. Which is it's another interesting one there where you're talking about, like, lads are probably just putting on and don't care. Like it's like the next campaign, and to be something after it, and it's part of their pre-match kit. And if you're not actually kind of properly kind of relating to it, then it's not going to make any.
You can't expect players that are going out to play in front of 40 or 60,000 people to stop and give this a second thought. They're not. Same for fans who are there. It might register for a split second. Gone. You're involved in the game. It's ineffectual.
But it's a great point what he makes about how maybe I think animals could be the wrong word. Although some of the stuff you see with especially last season was disgraceful. Especially the race, there's just no place for it at all. But like he's dead right. Like, and if you're a supporter of a team and you go to a match, any team, like, it brings out the best and worst in people. There's no, like, people just change. Footballers, like, even the same with footballers, like lads like Suarez, like, every player goes on the pitch and someone will say, as soon as I go on that pitch, I just become a different person. And again, I only relating just to yesterday because it kind of relate to it a small bit. I was at Millwall yesterday. Millwall were fined 10 grand this week for racism from some of our fans back in January. And I went to the match and I started thinking, well, I've never been to the New Den. And like, I was just doing a piece for tomorrow's Indo on it, and you're around the club and it's literally one of the nicest, like, around the place. You've got like young lads playing football, like having a crack with each other. Like, there's families that were there, there's like dads, mates and all there, and it was just a good atmosphere around the place. Then you go into the stand, then you go into the ground, and then first song is "No One Likes Us, No One Likes Us," where you know what I mean, and it's all ground, and it just brings out. It is that tribal nature of all sport. Maybe in England, and I've seen it, and like, you've been in stands in England, and some of the stuff is just mental. It's crazy. But then, as a journalist, one of the first things, especially in League of Ireland, you see one of the first things you ever do, or I ever do now, when I see a goal, is look at the fans, especially if they're away fans, because you just see like bodies going crazy, like limbs everywhere, and it's just one of the best sights that you could see, because that just sums up, as a football fan, that moment when the goal goes in just sums up just what it really is all about. That just kind of just elation and release, and that's why people go to sport. And then there is that other element which Everett is talking about here, and it's clear, especially now in England, over the last, there's been numerous instances, the Cyrus Christie stuff, and there's a broader context here of what's happening in the UK at the moment, where there's just a lot of horribleness around, you know.
He's good, it mentions the kind of the tropes around black footballers as well. Yeah. Player with great power and great pace, but, you know, do you hear enough about the vision and everything else? And, you know, we see that in even American football. You know, it was so long for black quarterbacks to be accepted, black coaches. We're the same in England now. Paul Inston's spoken about it before, the lack of black managers. Sol Campbell, how difficult he found it to get in when the likes of Frank Lampard and John Terry were getting jobs higher up the ladder. And Evra's a good line about it here, and you see it even with players like Rashford and Lingard at United getting slated at that charity game last year.
Oh yeah, for the way they were dressed.
For the way they were dressed, and they're dressed the same as every 20-something guy in Ireland and England. And
part of that though as well is like, yeah, there's an unconscious nature to it as well, of course. But with the Evra, with the Lingard and Rashford, there's probably United fans looking at that thinking, like, you've both been brutal last season, and there seem to be big time Charlies there, you know what I mean? Which is interesting. And Paul Ince, probably the biggest time Charlie of them all, who was also slating them, you know. And there's that element as well. I know there was that video of Lingard during the summer when in the hotel, and he's like with Rashford and in the kind of
Miami.
Now there's a bit of it, like, not the responsibility, because lads can do what they want, and he wasn't hurting anyone. Like, it was just a stupid video. But there's the context of coming off the back of the seat.
If they won the Premier League that year, it's fine.
Exactly.
Like, famously, you'll find the picture. Ryan Giggs and Paul Ince turned up for a Manchester United trophy presentation back in the day, and they'd had a bet as to who could wear the most ridiculous suit. And there's a famous picture of them holding the Premier League trophy in these awful suits. The crucial point being they're holding the Premier League trophy.
That's it.
Whereas Lingard and Rashford are standing inside the pitch charity game, dressed up to the nines. You know
how it's framed is all in the context of if you're successful or not. So the two lads show up well dressed, and it's part of, like the Spice Boys Liverpool team that underachieved in the 90s. Well, that's what's wrong with the club. Whereas if you're successful, they're having the crack. That's what's great about them, that they can have that little bit of
it's not to say there isn't a racial undercurrent there. I'm sure.
Well, Raheem Sterling was spot on about it.
Some people's minds there is, and John Barnes is always incredibly eloquent and interesting about unconscious racism. That he says himself. He says, I'm a racist. Unconsciously I have. Full of prejudice.
He's spoken brilliantly on that.
But John Barnes was great on it. It's what you went back earlier about Lukaku, when he was saying about kind of, you weren't so, I didn't think Lukaku kind of was being slow. But then one of the things that's always thrown at Lukaku is that he's lazy. You know what I mean? At the pitch, that he's someone who, you look at him, I don't mind looking at him as a supporter and a journalist, looking at him thinking, there's so much more from this fella. That's what I'm looking at as a from. But then you're sort of thinking, well, actually, am I subconsciously then just kind of thinking, well, that's like that he's lazy, like, you know what I mean? But then you're actually thinking, well, no, you look at him when he was at Belgium, and even there was that season at Everton, I think the last season with Martinez before things went sour for Martinez, and he was the best striker in the league. Like, he was absolutely brilliant, but then he just doesn't seem to have been able to relate that to at United.
He 100% is somebody who sometimes is in the mood and sometimes isn't. There's no doubt. By the way, Evra had to have 24-hour police protection around the Suarez thing. I hadn't realised that. So he had police parked outside his house at Alderley Edge for 24 hours a day. He talks about his
protection in Ballsbridge or somewhere as well.
He talks about his youth, which is it's no joke. So he grew up in the Parisian suburbs, really, really tough childhood. The youngest of 24 children. Patrice Evra is the youngest of 24 children. He describes his mother as the strongest person I know. He says he often saw rats in the 3-bedroom apartment he shared with his brothers and sisters, that he and 3 of his siblings shared one mattress. I did bad things. I stole food from shops, clothes, video games, bikes, shoes, that kind of thing. I begged in front of shops for people to buy me a sandwich. I was 7 or 8, and I would say, sorry, do you have €1? Which is just amazing. I never knew that at all about Patrice Evra.
And I never knew about I'd forgotten about his start at United as well. I remember going over, didn't himself and Vidic arrive in mid-season, and they played Liverpool in an FA Cup game at Old Trafford, which I was at with a load of mates, and I think it was a late Rio Ferdinand goal, 1-0 for United, and we had to go literally before the goal was scored to get our minibus back to somewhere in Middlesbrough where we were staying. We got bricked on the way out and everything. They thought we were Liverpool fans. Very long and cold journey back to the northeast with broken windows. But my memory of Evra and Vidic that night was they were sensational. And yet he's talking here about his first 6 months at United were so poor. And it's funny, like, I'm sure I would have realised that at the time, or maybe my whole mind was made up when I saw him play that good game against Liverpool. But he's very good talking about, even on his debut, he was sick the morning of it.
It was a lunchtime kickoff against Man City. He ate pasta at 9 a.m, felt sick, vomited in his room. I didn't have the courage to say to Ferguson, he always calls him Ferguson, if you noticed that. I didn't have the courage to say, Ferguson, I couldn't play because I felt sick. I was worried someone would say I was too soft. At one point I was in the post defending a corner and I was thinking, oh my God, the football here is so fast, it's so quick, it's so strong. I should have stayed in Monte Carlo. Ferguson shouted at me at half time and said, Patrice Evra, you can stop and you just watch and you learn English football. I went home, my agent was there with his wife and he said, I'm sorry, I brought you here. You should have stayed in Monaco. Talk about having faith in him. I finished the next 6 months to the end of the season, not my best, went on holidays, worked really hard, missed the World Cup, came back for pre-season and I was a man of the match in Amsterdam at a tournament. Mike Phelan came up to me and said, welcome to Man United, you're now a Man United player. This is my proudest moment.
It's for all the obviously the jokes that can be about Evra is on social media and stuff. That's what sums him up as a United player. The fact that he was dreadful for a while, but then came through it and had the character to come through it, and that's what he's been open about. That you look at this current United team, and there's obviously previews of the Premier League, and it's going to be starting. That's one of the aspects now is have this United team got the character to actually kind of put what happened last season behind them and get a top 4 place, because that's pretty much going to be, if they can get top 4, that's pretty much going to be a successful season for them, because considering City and Liverpool are so far ahead.
We'll come to that in one sec actually. There's loads of Premier League reviews. I've got to take an ad break, but that's Patrice Evra with Ollie Holt, and he was a player as well, Evra. He was such a good player, my goodness. So that's well worth the read, page 74, 78, 5. The youngest of 24 children, Patrice Evra, is just incredible. Short break, we'll finish up with the last few stories in just a sec.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Avantcard, powered by MasterCard.
Avantcard Reward Plus Credit Card, Ireland's only credit card that gives you interest refunds on purchases. Info correct June 2019. Source ccpc.ie. Avantcard DAC is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
This Irish success story is brought to you by Guaranteed Irish.
Did you know that Kingspan have a 50-year history of innovation and product development deep-rooted in Ireland's rural communities? Today, their world-class facility in County Monaghan produces the highest-performing insulation manufactured in Ireland. Guaranteed Irish helps you support companies that are altogether better choices for our communities. So, look out for it. GuaranteedIrish.ie. Altogether better.
If you're over 50, you might be experiencing deteriorating or blurred central vision. The good news is you can do something about it. MacuPrime Plus is a daily supplement for healthy eyes with the original scientifically proven ingredients and formula tested by the Nutrition Research Centre Ireland at Waterford IT. MacuPrime Plus delivers the zinc needed to maintain normal vision, plus carotenoids and vitamins. So look ahead. Ask your pharmacist or optician about MacuPrime Plus and help look after your eye health today. Always read the label.
Our unmissable end-of-season clearance event is now on at Homebase. Across a wide range of products including barbecues and garden furniture. We're paving the way for fresh new ranges at Homebase.
Are you putting your business at risk by using an unlicensed contractor to service your CCTV or intruder alarm system? Licensed contractors comply with standards set by the Private Security Authority and undergo criminal record checking. It is against the law to employ an unlicensed contractor to service or maintain your CCTV or intruder alarm system. Businesses using unlicensed contractors face prosecution and fines of up to €3,000. For more information and to find a licensed contractor, visit psa.gov.ie.
Italian summers, long days together in the sun, living la bella vita. In Ireland it's called the good life, and it's 3 days in June and maybe a weekend in August. But even in Irish summers, you can taste la bella vita with Italy's favourite beer, Birra Moretti. Ah, delicioso. Great taste, never lost in translation. Birra Moretti, l'italiana autentica. That means authentically Italian. Always drink responsabile. Visit drinkaware.ie.
Bruce Betting, one of Ireland's leading bookmakers. With best odds guaranteed on UK and Irish horse racing, Bruce Betting has you covered. And with the Bruce Betting app, we're always giving you more. T's and C's apply. Bruce Betting, in-store, online, and now on your phone. Over 18s, please gamble responsibly. See dunlewy.net.
We're now in the glory days of the Football and Hurling Championships, and the Sunday Independent will be there every step of the way, bringing insight, honesty and entertainment. I'm Joe Brawley. This Sunday join Colin O'Rourke, Eamon Sweeney, Dermot Crowe and me, the most fearless and passionate team in Irish sports writing. The Sunday Independent, the complete read.
Off the Ball. This is News Talk.
Neil says, at Molloy Joe slaughtering at David Sneyd and at Off the Ball today. Give the lad a break.
I'm just going to double me invoice, so it's all right.
This was the Mick McCarthy where I jumped in once or twice. So let's keep moving. Premier League, this time next week, we'll have Premier League on Off the Ball. It's back. And I don't know, are you desperate for it to be back? Have you missed it terribly?
No.
Felt like too long? Could you do with another few weeks away from it?
It's only when it comes back you realise, it's good to have it back. It really is.
Yeah.
It really is.
So what have the Sunday papers done?
Well, the Indo and the Times have pieces on Norwich City, who obviously opened the league on Friday night in Anfield against Liverpool. And the Indo piece is more on Timo Pukki, the bargain free transfer arrival at Carrow Road last year, finished with 24 goals, great success story. The Times, Jonathan Northcroft, the football correspondent, has done a more of an overview on Norwich City, some of which I knew, but in its entirety it's just a brilliant piece, and it's, with all the talk about silly money going around in English football and football in general, it still shows there's a way to do this, to shortcut all of that. And the story of how Norwich are where they are is just astonishing. He talks about Stuart Webber, who's kind of, I don't know what his title is, director of football, how he came in. He appointed Daniel Fark, who's this unknown German manager.
Okay.
Like, they were basically in the dumps, basically. Sold the club's best prospects, made a £43 million transfer profit while completely churning the squad, replaced every department head except one, and here they are, having been promoted to the Premier League, and they're going to face Liverpool, Chelsea and Manchester City in their first 5 games. So just a couple of stats on it. Norwich had the second highest ever wage bill in the Championship, which for a club that's self-funding makes no sense. This is Webber talking. And this is a great quote. He says, I remember walking around the training ground on the first day going, you've had 4 years out of 6 in the Premier League, yet the training pitches are a hill. There are 49 porta cabins and the gym is the size of this room. The stadium is not bad but not brilliant, and I'm thinking, you've nothing to show for it. I was criticised in the AGM that year when I said it was a bit like winning the lottery and pissing it all against the wall. Worst was the attitude of entitlement from the staff and players who almost felt like the club owed them a living. So that's how bad they were. And yet 3 years after being dumped from the Premier League, and we were talking about parachute payments, you can maybe talk a bit about that, Dave, they're back up.
And so they get rid of the best players and get them off the wage bill. Is there a certain profile of player they're then signing?
Well, he goes into the 4 really success stories that they had last year, which would have been Pukki, who people remember from an underwhelming year at Glasgow. Played 4 years for Brøndby in Denmark. He was in Seville, so he's basically a journeyman player. And yet here he is, and he turns into this magic act.
So we're talking Moneyball type tricks here?
Yeah, kind of in a way. Now, I don't know if it's that same focus on analytics or whatever, but it is. It's really coming up with it. There's other guys. Moritz Leitner on Dortmund's bench in the 2013 Champions League final. Mario Vrancic, a former Germany under-20 player. Emi Buendia, a £1.35 million arrival from Getafe, who was scouted playing on loan at Cultural Leonese, a tiny side relegated from the Spanish second tier. So these are the guys who have got them back into the Premier League. And you look at Aston Villa, who the last I heard had made 12 signings. Fulham last year, who completely revamped their squad, went straight back down. And you just think, what a brilliant story. And there's even stuff about Tim Krul, who was 10 years at Newcastle, never saw Mike Ashley, like a total phantom figure. And it says here he was basically 10 weeks here, and we've had dinner with the owners, and Tim's had a shirt presented by Brian Gunn, the legendary Norwich keeper. So everything about it, the culture, the focus, the change in, we're not going to spend silly money here, we're going to do it properly. And as Dave was saying outside, if they get relegated this year, they're still ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
So it's a great story.
Well, that's it. It almost, not that it's a free hit. Any team that goes up, they're expected to go back down. But what is a big thing for clubs, if they do go down, is the parachute payments. Like, this is where they can be so clever. You can almost make a business plan on the back of it, like where the TV revenue is so big. If you come down in the first year after getting relegated, you get 55% of the TV revenue. You get 45% for the second season, and then 25%. So after Norwich had gone down the last time, they've been getting this money, had to try to balance the books. And now they've got back up to the Premier League at the third time of asking. Whereas there's clubs who will just throw money at the situation to try and get back up straight away. And not that we're a yo-yo, but like you have to be able to, you have to have some sort of structure like this and think like this, where if you're going to be getting that money to come in, that it's put to the best use possible. And not an awful lot of clubs have done that. And if you look at some of the clubs that have, what's happened to, say, the likes of Bolton Wanderers, like Coventry City, clubs who have all been in the Premier League not so long ago. Like Berry, I know Berry haven't been in the Premier League, but they're a club who are just could be going to the wall. Like, it's just, there's so much money flowing around at even at below championship level, where like there's lads at Sheffield Wednesday who are on like 40-50 grand a week. Like, you know, these lads who kind of are never probably going to get near the Premier League, but can just make such a living, because clubs might say, well, we'll just throw major money at it, you know. And that's the fact that Norwich have kind of identified that and said, well, as they said, they kind of wasted a lot of money. It has to be put in properly into infrastructure. And even at that level, where you go to clubs, and even in Premier League, Burnley would be an example. I know I'm maybe trailing off here a little bit, but in terms of using this money not just on players, whereas a couple of years ago you went to Burnley and the training ground and you're like, how is this a Premier League club? Like, it's brutal. It's why clubs would bring fellas to a stadium rather than a training ground to sign them, because like, you go back 20 years, Middlesbrough were actually ahead of the curve in that they got a huge training complex, and then obviously the Riverside, but now Burnley have put that money into a huge training centre in a place called Barnfield, and you go there and you're just like, right, okay,
it's big time.
It is big time. You might have a bad season and you could go down, but I think you're going to be, as a club, you've got things in the right place, and that's just how clubs have to act, because the Premier League, it's just like you get chewed up and you can get spat out, and if you're a Bolton or if you're somewhere like that, it can end very, very badly for you.
Norwich have they've brought in 4 players this summer. Do you know how much they've spent on them? 3.75 million. So
total?
Yeah. So they're sticking to their guns. They've obviously said, like you said, Joe, maybe a kind of a Moneyball approach.
Yeah.
This is the approach that has got us to the Premier League. And how many times, I mean, we talk about Fulham and Aston Villa and other teams, they've just said, this is not going to do it for us in the Premier League, and it's a total change, and they're washed straight back out. So it's a club you'd love to see stay up and do things properly for a while.
Like, wasn't there a great, again, I mentioned it before, on Twitter, like 20 years ago, 20 million quid got you Andrei Shevchenko. Now it gets you the lad McBurney from Swansea going to Sheffield United, and now that's just the nature of inflation of football and how it's gone. But like, it's weird. Like, the money that is going around can kind of turn people off, and it's always thrown at it. But with transfers, I know obviously Harry Maguire, but like sometimes with the money that's there, you just almost have to ignore it and say, well, if they're a success, it's worth it, essentially. If and they get exactly what is needed from that club for that club, then it is, because like, you can't say, oh well, Neil, top level, like, it's just the money is just ridiculous. Like, there is Alex Ferguson used to always say there's no value in the market.
Sure. Well, Neil and I were wondering in the news round, Robbie Savage at his peak, would he be worth 30 million now? I would say yeah.
Yeah,
able to get around the pitch.
He's British for a start, which always bumps up the value. So
blonde players do better as well. That's a fact.
It's the anti-Moneyball.
You notice them more, apparently. It's totally it's anti-Moneyball all the way. And there's various pullouts. Like, if you're looking for a sense of what people are saying, Graham Souness, for instance, is saying for City and Liverpool it's a race to 100 points. City had 98 last year, so they'll both be targeting 100 points. And he reckons, this was maybe the most interesting line in the whole thing, if both City and Liverpool had 4 transfer windows where they didn't do anything, he said, I still reckon they'd finish first and second in 2 years' time. Yeah. That's how far ahead of the rest they are, in Graham Souness' opinion. And Eamon Sweeney, I thought, was bang on in terms of what's going to be really interesting over the next couple of months. He's like, there'll be, plenty of tension at the Etihad and Anfield down the line, but really, watching Solskjaer over the next couple of months is going to be the most interesting thing. It'll be like watching a man walking a tightrope between 2 skyscrapers with no safety net beneath them. There is little room for error. Things escalate quickly at Old Trafford. He says that by August 27th, when United had lost 3-0 to Spurs, really, it was endgame for Mourinho. So he said Chelsea next Sunday, followed by an away match against Wolves 8 days later. Both fixtures with the potential to put the manager instantly under pressure. And then he says it'll be Southampton, Crystal Palace at home, and Leicester City, which will provide the opportunity for the crisis headlines. And then Liverpool October 19th, followed again by Norwich, Bournemouth, Brighton, Sheffield United, Aston Villa, the kind of easy run, he says, which enables Solskjaer to get his caretaker reign off to a flying start. And I hadn't realised this, not until December 7th, when they travel to Man City, will United face one of their top 6 rivals away. He said their first meetings with Chelsea, Arsenal, Liverpool, Spurs are all at home. And he writes, if Manchester United are not in the top 4 by Christmas, things are not going to improve. Or sorry, in fairness to him, he says things are unlikely to improve after that. Not for Solskjaer at any rate. Which is hard to argue with. I hadn't realised that's how the fixtures fell. And so it is probably fair to say if they're not in the top 4 by Christmas, then the owners and Solskjaer and everyone's going to realise they're probably not going to finish in the top 4.
There was a very good quote, I don't know where I saw it during the week, some unnamed newspaper guy or editor, haven't a clue where I saw it, but he said Manchester City stories online get 10 to 15% traction that Man U stories get. So they're still that name, they still get that bounce online in newspapers, on radio and TV. They are the story, regardless of what they're doing. We saw that last year, so it's a very good point that Eamon makes.
Yeah, it was something Pep Guardiola gave out about.
Yeah.
Remember he was saying that he opened, I think it was the Daily Mail he was talking about, but it was the Monday after they'd won the league. And he thought, well, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to enjoy all the Pep is wonderful articles and Man City this and Man City that. And he said, the story the day after we won the league is Paul Pogba argument with fan at Old Trafford as they're doing their lap of appreciation.
They're the Conor McGregor of the English Premiership. They just eat everything up.
It's almost as if this is like the perfect storm for where the Premier League is at in terms of the drama of that. It's like kind of like a soap opera all the time. And then you've got United, who have always been, them in Liverpool, the biggest soap opera of all. And United...
And sorry, what is the biggest soap opera of all?
In terms of the Premier League and Man United,
literally, what is the biggest soap opera?
Coronation Street.
Is it?
Oh, yeah. Not even.
Coronation Street.
Don't even get started.
Is it not EastEnders? I don't know.
No idea.
I've genuinely
no idea.
Or is Dallas a soap opera?
See, this is actually again kind of biased and kind of looking at English football, where we have first seat in our doorstep, and we're not giving it due appreciation. But because what I mean is that in terms of the perfect storm is. Yeah. Everything's so personality driven and kind of where's the next drama, where's the next kind of controversy. And United, you've got Paul Ince writing an open letter, signing off Ince, kind of slating every United player, thinking Ed Woodward's going to open this and read through it.
On that point, actually, there's a growing market. It just suddenly hit me. I wanted to make the point. There is now, and I see it amongst my friends as well. There is now a growing cohort of people who do not watch the 90 minutes of football ever. They don't watch it, but they listen to podcasts and they'll keep an eye on all the news reports and they follow the soap opera.
A lot of that is distilled into one of the points made here, and we were talking about it earlier. It's the 6-pointer syndrome. Like, people will crowd the pubs for City and Liverpool when they meet, or if anybody else threatens the top tier. But apart from that, people will not watch it. And if you have games like that, that's 2 games in the season. So aside from that, that's an awful lot of filler that you have to get people interested. Hence United is a soap opera. Hence why all our friends won't watch 90 minutes of football.
But on the point, sorry, as well, I can understand. Even like I find myself now when I'm watching a match, even I'm at matches sometimes, I'm like checking stuff online as well, and should actually just be focused on the game that's in front of me, whether even live at a match or watching it on telly.
David is a freelance journalist. He's available to cover games for your publication.
But with United, what it seems now is that it's almost like what Liverpool, the joke about Liverpool, it's just that final bit of the puzzle. This is their year essentially. Whereas United, no one's thinking this is going to be their year. They always seem to be either one catastrophe or one player away from everything's great or everything's a disaster. Now it's Dybala.
United this year is going to be how interesting is this going to get kind of season. It's not like will they finish top 4 or will they win. It's nothing like that. Will Solskjaer keep his job?
But sort of like if Solskjaer loses his job, it's kind of like bringing Lassie out the back and shooting him in the head. Like, it's just because he's such a.
Is it Lassie or is it a soap opera?
I'm just because he's just this. He's this character. I know. Yeah.
Bella.
But what's your man from Glenroe? I don't know. Miley. Yeah. But like because he is this character. He's just this person who is a hero of the club for what he did as a player, and it'd be one of the great stories if he was able to actually have United challenging, but. With the players that he has, it's just not going to happen. Like Liverpool,
they bite your hand off.
Oh, stop, of course. Liverpool and City, and Souness is right to a degree that Liverpool and City are so far ahead of everyone else. But football can change very quickly. So this thing of 4 transfer windows, like not really. Like all it takes is a couple of players here or there to go, and the whole.
Look, if Pep goes in the same way that if Jim Gavin went, things could change very quickly.
Yeah.
Or if Jurgen Klopp went, things could change so quickly.
Except for Norwich, because they're grand.
Well, Norwich have a more sustainable model.
Yeah.
By the way, just a special last mention. I thought Tommy Conlon's piece was a bit different and a bit interesting, well written. The usual kind of things we say when he's writing. So he was talking about like the really huge number of people who just have no interest in sport, you know. And what was the line? I thought it was really good. Oh yeah, he says, we all know people who have not the slightest interest in sport, and God bless them, they often come across as strangers in a strange land, marginalised from mainstream society because they can't hold a conversation. And he says something, it's no harm to remember that a cohort of the population, maybe bigger than we think, find the ubiquitous presence of sport on their landscape almost oppressive, domineering, and a sort of cultural tyranny from which there is no escape. I would think that is a very, very true observation. Really would.
He had a great line on Fintan O'Toole's piece in the Irish Times where Fintan talked about maybe we should just call novelists golfers and painters jockeys, and he said straight away one had visions of Theo Dorgan, the poet and devotee of Cork hurling, leading out his beloved county in the famous blood and bandages like a bardic Christic ring, sending sonnets flying over the black spot from all angles.
I read that Fintan O'Toole piece and he did have a fair point. So he's looking at, like, in the same week, government stump up 50 million for the Ryder Cup. Meanwhile, there's this project around Parnell Square which has been talked about for years. They're trying to turn it into a cultural quarter, trying to have a really state-of-the-art library there, a conference venue, a music centre, kind of a multicultural exhibition space. This has been talking about for a long time. It's an area of the city that could do with the money. And
it's something permanent.
Yeah, and they'd reached the conclusion it's now not going to happen because of funding. And then in the very same week, Ryder Cup, 50 million, no problem, 100%.
Like the people of Adara will tell you there'll be long-lasting legacy, but we exactly.
Like the only thing that'll happen is there'll be a bypass of Adara,
which is great for them, but in terms of the wider population, cultural quarter.
I remember I saw that article in the Irish Times, and you can understand where someone, I can't get into the understanding properly of knowing why these decisions are made. But then if you tie back into what we're talking about sport, like sport is obviously part of culture.
He says it's not.
Right, well, he's wrong. So like...
hang on, let me give the... this is what he says, to be fair. Roger Federer is an artist. I'd call him a performance artist. But most sport is not art. It is part of the culture, pop culture, but it will never reach the depth of humanity that great music or literature or cinema can achieve.
See your point earlier, Dave, about a goal going in for your team. Like, you know, cultural snobs will kind of react in horror to that, but is that not as visceral as anything else?
You yourself said that football is a soap opera.
I've probably contradicted myself 10 times in the last 20 minutes.
So it's not great art, it's a soap opera.
No, I'm saying it's part of the culture, sport and football.
Part of the culture.
Like, he
says it is part of the culture, but it's not going to reach the same depth of humanity that great music, literature, or cinema can achieve.
I'm not worried about getting to the great depths of humanity.
Well, either is he. He says, by the way, personally I'm fine with that. I'm not asking him to explain the human condition. To me, it has a generous soul, and what it gives is more than enough.
That's actually smart. That's smart. But like say with music and sport are so interlinked. You go to a match. If you're a fan, you're singing certain songs that are taken from they're still from pop culture. But like I know you can probably sport brings out.
I'm giving you a hard time here.
It's a joy in your face.
I just cannot wait to get to the Harry Lemon after this and go for about 10 points. but like...
they're intertwined, of course. But Soccer AM hit that very well when Soccer AM was kind of a...
pop culture,
maybe kind of a more relevant programme than it feels now, I suppose.
Like, I'm only speaking as a fan of someone who loves Irish football and does love English football, where like there's a connection when you go to a match with people who are around you that... Like, I'm sure you can get it, but if you go to kind of an art gallery, and I'm sure there are people who can appreciate the beauty of a great painting, and that's fair enough. That doesn't mean they should be kind of deriding fellas who are, and men and women who kind of can get that sense of belonging from what sport can have, and that kind of appreciation of kind of seeing something like beautiful happen on a football pitch or a hurling pitch, where like some members. I'll give you an example, right? I know this is mad. Dimitar Berbatov. I remember watching it on telly, but Man United played West Ham about 8 or 9 years ago on a Tuesday night, and Dimitar Berbatov got the ball on the byline and did a little flip around. Now,
I know what you're talking about.
That is art. That is a
performance art.
Yeah, you know, like
still art.
Like,
I agree.
You know, like Paul Ozam, Eddie Gorman,
Bayer Leverkusen.
Like these lads are like they do things that are a work of art on a football pitch. Like Dennis Bergkamp, like some of these fellas are geniuses, and I don't think you have to pit one
against the
aspect
other.
against.
Movie on Zidane.
Like,
That's a piece of art, bad art.
Bad art, yeah. Why do they just, with the same complaint everyone has? It's completely out of context. Everything Zidane does. He beautifully strikes a ball into the distance.
You don't see what the...
Could have went out for a throw-in.
Probably not, but
no.
You know.
Rob Harris just tweeted there, very loud booing of the national anthem by Liverpool fans at Wembley before the Community Shield, which is another way football taps into what's going on around the nation. Listen, Brendan O'Brien from the Irish Examiner, David Sneyd, whose piece on his trip over to the UK will be in the Irish Independent tomorrow.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for coming in and reviewing the Sunday papers. We'll build up to Super 8's bit of GAA next hour.
Hey everybody, this Thursday OTB Sports Radio is going live for 17 hours uninterrupted. That's non-stop, Nathan.
That's right, Ger. 7 a.m. to midnight, we're going to be launching our Premier League coverage with our very own Deadline Day special. We'll have new shows every 2 hours.
With the very biggest and best names in football coverage that you've come to know and love from Off the Ball.
We're going to get stuck into the new football season, keep you up to date with all the latest news and transfers. Where can you hear it, Ger?
You can get us on the Go Loud app or offtheball.com/radio.
Off the Ball on News Talk.
It fuels our bodies. It gives us comfort. It brings us together. It's generally good for us. We talk about it, we indulge in it, we spend a fortune on it. So, this August on News Talk, we're celebrating all things food. All month long, we'll be feeding you a full menu of culinary delights and inspiring you with fresh ideas as we explore the very best of Ireland's vibrant food culture. And we want you to share too. Celebrate with us on air, on social, and on newstalk.com/foodfest. Thanks to Deliveroo, delivering food freedom.
Satisfying afternoons with Harvey Norman. First-time buyer? Wondering how to get everything done? Don't. Just sit back and watch your house become a home with Harvey Norman's delivery and install.
Go, Harvey, go! We're getting fired up at the Arnott Summer Sale with further reductions of up to 70% off. Ends Bank Holiday Monday, the Arnott Summer Sale. Shop in store and online at arnotts.ie.
The Cadbury Flake McFlurry is here at McDonald's. So break out your short shorts because summer has officially begun. Soft dairy ice cream swirled with Cadbury Flake chocolate pieces and delicious chocolatey or raspberry sauce. Available until the 6th of August.
Treat yourself with an escape to the K Club, the elegant resort in the heart of the idyllic Irish countryside, Straffan, County Kildare. Take a step back from your daily fatigue and indulge in the K Club's luxury 5-star surroundings. Relax and enjoy our country estate experiences, all only 30 minutes from Dublin.